I think that's, pretty fair. I mean, the hot take there obviously is that I have them above Dallas, but we'll get to. We should actually. Why don't we get to Dallas?
Yeah, let's just spiral straight into that.
Spiral right in because you have them tied.
I do actually.
99 points for each of them. Dallas. I mean, this is a team that seems to have it all in some regards, right? I mean, they've got their mix of young, new, fresh talent. I mean, Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, those guys, they're not like super green anymore, but they're the future of this team. You still have Jamie Benn. You still have Joe Pavelski. You have those guys still producing for you, which is frankly a miracle.
I took the words right out of my mouth.
I mean, you have your big defenseman and Miro Heiskanen. You have Brian Suter as well.
Yeah.
And then you have your goalie in Ottinger. I mean, there's so much about this team's construction that just looks ready to do damage, and I think they won't. Let me. That's
okay. Continue.
I know that's the worst way to lead into my take, but I don't know, man. I look at the old guys we talked about. Jamie Benn, I find it very difficult to see him repeating the season he had last year. And the same goes for Sagan and especially Pavelski going into his age 39 season. Hey, man, very few players have defied time the way he has to this point, to be completely fair. But I just think it's gonna come at some point.
Yeah, I mean, if the clock's already ticking on Phil Kessel, if he's having a hard time finding a team, like it's a really good thing that Pavelski's worked himself into this locker room as such an essential piece to the spirit of the team.
Right.
Like, because like regardless of like time, the fact that Joe Pavelski is in this league is nothing short of just his hard work and dedication. He's the first one on the ice and the first one off. He spends
100%.
I think someone say spends like an hour at minimum tipping pucks every day in practice. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Like that's dedication.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he stays scoring, and it's not because he's fast enough to turn the play anymore.
Right.
That's why most teams will stay away from him if this relationship was to ever sour.
For sure.
He doesn't have that X factor to break the ice anymore, to get space. But if you have space to give him, he'll make the most of it.
For sure.
So it's kind of a tough marriage that they have going on right now because something's going to have to give eventually.
Yeah. It always does.
I'm just hoping that he is able to retire gracefully instead of trying to continue pushing.
Right. And I mean, that's without me even mentioning, Wyatt Johnson, Duchesne, Marchment, Dadonov. Like, they got some really good pieces here. I do think, though, like, I expect Jason Robertson has a bit of a down year, and that's not a knock on the guy. I think he is a 40-goal scorer. The problem is that most 40-goal scorers have up and down years, right?
Yes.
Pretty much anyone not named Alex Ovechkin has up and down years when they're goal scorers. So I'd expect Robertson has a bit of a regression just for this season. Rupe Hintz, I think, had a phenomenal season. I think he might also be at a kind of his ceiling. Could be proven wrong there, but it's just my feeling is I think they get to the playoffs. I have them in the second wildcard spot. You have them tied for second, but I think it's going to be a little bit of tough sledding for them this year.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I just don't think that this team is going to win until they get rid of Jamie Benn. I think he's cursed, and I think that he's a bad leader. He's not what you need in the locker room. He never has been.
I mean, man, watching that last playoff series where the only games they won were the games he was suspended for.
Like, I'm not crazy over here.
It's pretty damning evidence.
When Jamie Benn was performing well, and he was on the first line, do you know who he went out of his way to fight with every single game they played? Miles Wood. Miles Wood is on the fourth line. He is the least of your concerns. You
Leave him alone.
Why are you fighting him every game? That's 5 minutes you're not scoring.
Yeah, Jamie Benn's a clown.
Jamie Benn, for lack of phrasing it poorly, is lacking maturity in a way that I've never seen for a player of his age.
Right.
And in a way that, like, you wouldn't originally identify it as lacking maturity.
But as he gets older, it becomes more apparent.
Yeah, exactly. Like the older he gets, the more you're just like, like you never learned enough. Like you never stepped outside of yourself to actually be a student.
Right.
And just kind of went with it.
Yeah, that's very fair. I also think it worries me their usage of Oettinger. It reminds me a little bit of Thatcher Demko, where I think both of those guys have the capability to really take over and dominate a playoff run. Like I think if you go into the playoffs and Thatcher Demko's hot, you can ride him to the finals. I also think the exact same about Oettinger. If you can get into the playoffs and Ottinger's hot and healthy, he can ride you to the finals as well. The problem is that they ride this guy 65 games a year, and so he's playing game 80 by the time he gets through the playoffs, and he's done. It's not you can't have that.
No.
And I think that like you pretty much can't have that for any goalie that's not named Vasilevsky or Shesterkin.
Exactly.
So as much as I have a lot of faith in Jake Oettinger as a goalie and in Dallas, I think it's going to burn them because they're going to play him way too much. I think coaches need to be more disciplined about their usage of goalies. I know that it's really tough in the regular season when you have a good goalie that good and a backup that's not as good. You want to play him so much, but like you can never ask a goalie how he's feeling because he will always say he's ready to play.
Yeah.
You have to be the one to draw that line in the sand and say, okay, yeah, sure. I know you're playing great. Everything's good, but we're playing Arizona tonight. You're going to sit out for a couple days.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, you need to have that maturity, especially when you have like, and not to shit on their defense because their defense is pretty all right.
It's all right, yeah.
But only 3 of the 6 are really people I'd keep around. Like, I don't really feel like Thomas Harley's to be relied on. Nils Lundqvist, who?
Sure.
And like Esa Lindell I like Lindell, but
I like Lindell too.
I wouldn't call him reliable enough to like stick a goalie out there for 60. Like, I wouldn't call him reliable enough to have a split tandem out there and be sticking a backup in front of him every 3rd game or 4th game.
Right.
Like, it just concerns me a little too much.
Yeah, that's very fair.
And I'm not saying that like this defensive core is terrible. In fact, there's a lot of really great things here, but Hankapää had an off year 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And he's still declining. He's 31.
Sure.
Heiskanen, Suter, like Suter's still being bought out of his last deal.
Yeah, I mean Minnesota's still paying him.
And I mean like there's a reason he's bought out of that last deal.
Yeah.
It's because it was a bad deal and he wasn't worth it. So like I have a hard time believing that he's a first line caliber defensive player right now. Like I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think that he's. I actually like riding Suter up there. Again, it's weird. I'm making lots of Canucks comparisons right now, but I think that's a guy it's kind of like Quinn Hughes. You know, when you put him beside Heiskanen, where you don't need him to be all that. You just need him to be reliable defensively.
Yeah,
and I think he is that.
He is. The great thing about Ryan Suter is that he's mature.
Yeah,
like he's a very mature player, and he knows when to retreat. Like he'll never make a bad pinch.
Yeah,
which is great. But like that's the best thing I have to say about his game, which worries me out of a first liner.
Very fair. That's very fair.
When you put him next to Heiskanen, I get it. Because like the Quinn Hughes comparison, that definitely makes it, that's a better sell for me.
Right.
But it's still one of those things where like if I'm like contending the way Dallas says they're going to be contending, I don't buy it.
And that's totally fair because like, yeah, sure, maybe we're making that comparison and he can be the Luke Schenn to Miro Heiskanen, but wouldn't you rather have the Devon Taves to Makar?
Yeah, exactly.
I get that for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I see a bit of a regression happening here, and I think this is really their last shot for a couple of years because they're as much as Seguin and Pavelski and Jamie Benn are old, and I think they're going to fall off. If they do fall off, you need to replace them.
Oh, 100%. But do they have anything? Have they done any work to replace them yet? Have they like?
They don't have replacements for those 3 guys right now.
Exactly.
That's just what it is. Yeah,
they're going to be doomed for a while.
So I mean, you have you bridged Robertson because you're absolute buffoons, but I mean you have these guys that are young. You're gonna have a lot of time with them, so you'll probably get another kick at the can in time. Again, also with Oettinger and Heiskanen, but. This is it looks like it's going to be one of their last runs for the immediate future.
Yeah, and I mean that's banking on if Robertson even re-signs with them.
Yeah,
like he's free of his RFA status once he gets over this bridge, right? This is his second deal.
I think he's still an RFA when this deal's done.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, okay. It's his second deal, but he's still RFA at the end of it.
Okay, it was short enough to actually break.
Yeah, same as Pettersson's, but
smart.
Even then, we're in a new world, right? As much as when Matthew Tkachuk was an RFA and decided he wasn't going to sign, a lot of people thought that wasn't anything except a guy wanting to get out of Calgary, right? Well, maybe there's not a trend here. It's just one guy that decides to do that. But now you look around the league, you look at Pierre-Luc Dubois, you look at Alex DeBrincat, and I mean, now we have some other guys coming up like Elias Pettersson. This very quickly could turn into a trend in the league of players finishing those bridge deals and saying, nah, I'm good.